The sea was angry that night. Waves hit the rocks like fists against a door, and the wind screamed through the cliffs as if it wanted to pull the whole island into the water. Somewhere in the darkness, a man was holding onto a broken piece of wood. Just a plank, nothing more, and he was trying to stay alive. His name was Odysseus, and he had been trying to get home for 10 years. Julie pushed open the heavy wooden door of the library. The room was warm. Golden light came from the small lamps on the shelves, and the air smelled like old paper and candle wax. Outside, it was raining, a soft, quiet rain, but in here, everything was still. She walked slowly between the tall shelves, running her fingers along the spines of the books. Most of them were familiar. Histories, novels, poetry collections she had seen many times before. But tonight, something was different. At the very end of the last shelf, where the shadows gathered, a book was glowing. Not brightly, not like a flashlight, more like the last light of the sun before it disappears. Warm, gold, almost alive. Julie reached for it. The cover was made of dark leather, old and cracked. There was no title on the front, but when she turned it over, she saw a single word pressed into the back, in letters so small she had to bring the book close to her face. Nostos. She didn't know the word, but she felt it somewhere deep, like a memory she couldn't quite reach. She opened the book. The pages were blank at first. Then the letters began to appear one by one, as if someone were writing them at that very moment. The light from the lamps grew brighter, then brighter still, until the whole room was white, and Julie felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. She opened her eyes to salt and wind. The sky was enormous, blue and empty, stretching in every direction. Below her, the sea moved in long, slow waves, deep green and cold. She was standing on a rocky shore, and the sun was so strong it made her eyes hurt. Julie looked down at herself. Her clothes were different now, a simple tunic of rough cloth, sandals on her feet, a shawl around her shoulders. She looked like everyone else in this world. She looked like she belonged. A sound reached her from the water. A man was swimming, struggling, through the waves toward the shore. His arms moved slowly, heavy with exhaustion, and every few seconds a wave pushed him back. But he kept going. Julie watched. He finally reached the rocks and pulled himself out of the water. He lay on his back, breathing hard, staring at the sky. His body was covered in cuts and bruises. His clothes, what was left of them, were torn and full of salt. He looked like a man who had fought the sea itself and barely won. For a long time, he did not move. Then he sat up, looked around, and saw Julie standing near the trees.
Who are you? Is this your island?
No, I'm a traveler, like you. He studied her for a moment. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and deeply tired. Then he nodded slowly, as if travelers washing up on strange shores was nothing unusual to him.
Then we are both far from home.
He stood up with difficulty, his legs shaking, and walked toward the tree line. Julie followed, keeping a safe distance. She did not know exactly where she was yet, but the landscape, the olive trees, the white rocks, the color of the sea, told her she was somewhere in ancient Greece. And this man, with his scars and his proud, broken walk, was Odysseus. She was inside the Odyssey. They walked together in silence through a small forest of olive and oak trees. The air was thick with the smell of wild herbs, thyme, oregano, something sweet that Julie couldn't name. Birds sang in the branches above them. Odysseus stopped near a stream and drank. He drank for a long time, like a man who hadn't tasted fresh water in days. When he finished, He sat against a tree and closed his eyes. Julie sat a few steps away and watched the water. "How long have you been at sea?" He opened one eye and looked at her.
I stopped counting the days a long time ago. The gods have their own calendar.
He said it simply, without anger, without sadness, just a fact. The gods controlled the weather, the sea, the wind. If they wanted you to suffer, you suffered. If they wanted you to drown, you drowned. And if they let you live, you thanked them and kept moving. Julie noticed the way he said the gods, not with fear, but with a kind of tired respect. These were not distant ideas to him. They were real. They were as real as the rocks and the water. Interesting, the way he talks about the gods, like neighbors he doesn't trust. She said it quietly, mostly to herself. A sound came from beyond the trees. Voices. Female voices, laughing. Odysseus sat up, suddenly alert, every muscle in his body tense.
Stay here and stay quiet.
Julie didn't argue. She moved behind a thick olive tree and watched. A group of young women appeared at the edge of the stream, carrying baskets of cloth. They were washing clothes in the water, talking and laughing. One of them, taller than the others, with dark hair tied back and a calm, confident face, seemed to be their leader. This was Nausicaa, daughter of King Alcinous. Julie recognized the scene immediately. Odysseus stepped forward, and the young women saw him. Most of them screamed and ran, but Nausicaa did not move. She stood straight, looked at the stranger, and waited.
My lady, I ask for your help. I have no home, no ship, no clothes. I have been at sea for many days. I ask only for kindness.
His voice was careful, respectful. He chose his words like a man who understood that this moment could save his life or end it. Nausicaa looked at him for a long time.
You speak well for a man who looks like the sea threw him away.
There was no fear in her voice, only curiosity. She told her women to bring fresh clothes, water, and oil. Odysseus washed himself in the stream while the women waited at a distance. Julie watched from behind her tree and noticed something important. Odysseus was not just strong, he was smart. He knew exactly how to speak to Nausicaa, with enough humility to show respect, but enough confidence to show that he was not an ordinary man. Listen to how carefully he chooses each word. That's not just politeness, that's survival. Nausicaa led them to her father's palace. The road followed the coast, and Julie walked behind the group, watching the landscape change from wild forest to cultivated fields, then to the outskirts of a city. The houses were white, the streets were clean, and the harbor was full of ships. This was Sharia, the island of the Phaeacians, a people known for their ships, their hospitality, and their love of stories. The palace of King Alcinous was enormous. Stone columns lined the entrance, and the floors were polished so smooth that Julie could see her own reflection in them. Bronze statues stood in the corners, and along the walls, torches burned with a steady golden light. King Alcinous sat on a carved wooden throne at the far end of the great hall. He was an older man with a white beard and kind, careful eyes. Beside him sat Queen Arete, whose face was still and serious, a woman who clearly made important decisions in this palace. Nausicaa spoke first.
Father, I found this man on the shore. He's a stranger, but he speaks with honor. I believe we should welcome him.
The king looked at Odysseus. Then he looked at his wife. Arete studied the stranger's face without expression.
Stranger, you are welcome in my home. Sit, eat, rest. In the morning you may tell us who you are.
Odysseus bowed his head.
You are generous, King. I will remember this kindness.
Julie found a quiet corner near the wall and sat down. Servants brought food, bread, roasted meat, olives, cheese, wine mixed with water. The smell made her stomach turn with hunger. She watched Odysseus eat. He ate slowly, carefully, even though he was clearly starving. He was performing. Every movement, every word, every pause was calculated. He was a man who knew that his survival depended on making the right impression. So that's what they mean by Odysseus the Cunning. He's not just clever with plans, he's clever with people. After the meal, a blind poet entered the hall. He carried a small harp, and when he sat down, the entire room fell silent. Julie felt the change immediately. It was like the moment in a theater when the lights go down and everyone holds their breath. The poet began to sing. He sang about the Trojan War. He sang about the great wooden horse, the trick that ended the war, and the man who had planned it all. He sang about Odysseus. Julie watched Odysseus's face. At first, he showed nothing. But as the song continued, as the poet described the screams inside the burning city, the friends who never came home, the smoke rising into the sky, something changed. Odysseus turned his face away from the king and pulled his cloak over his head. His shoulders shook. He was crying, not loud, dramatic crying, quiet, private tears, the kind that come when you remember something you have been trying to forget. He's been so strong for so long, but the song breaks through everything. King Alcinous noticed. He was a wise man, and he understood what the tears meant. He raised his hand, and the poet stopped.
Stranger, the song has touched your heart. I think there is something you haven't told us. Who are you?
The room was completely silent. Every person looked at Odysseus. He lowered his cloak. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady.
I am Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca. I fought at Troy. I have been trying to return home for 10 years. The sea, the gods, and my own mistakes have kept me away.
A murmur went through the hall like wind through tall grass. Everyone knew the name, Odysseus, the man of many tricks, the hero who had ended the war, the king who couldn't find his way home. Julie felt the weight of his words. 10 years of war, and then 10 years of trying to go home. 20 years away from everything he loved. His wife Penelope, waiting. His son Telemachus, growing up without a father. 20 years? Most people can't imagine being away from home for 20 days. King Alcinous leaned forward on his throne.
Tell us your story, Odysseus. Tell us everything. Where have you been? What have you seen?
And so Odysseus began. He told them about the Cyclops, the giant with one eye who trapped Odysseus and his men in a cave and ate them, 2 at a time. He told them how he had blinded the giant with a burning stick and escaped by hiding under the bellies of sheep. He told them about the witch Circe, who turned his men into pigs with a cup of wine. He had stayed on her island for a full year before his men begged him to leave. He told them about the land of the dead, where he had spoken to the ghosts of his fallen friends, and to the prophet Tiresias, who told him the path home. He told them about the Sirens, women whose singing was so beautiful that any man who heard it would jump into the sea and drown. Odysseus had tied himself to the mast of his ship so he could hear the song without dying. He told them about Scylla, the monster with 6 heads, and Charybdis, the whirlpool that swallowed ships whole. He had lost 6 men to Scylla, 1 for each head, and he could still hear their screams. He told them about the island of the sun god, where his hungry men killed the sacred cattle and were punished with a storm that destroyed the ship and killed every man except Odysseus himself. And he told them about Calypso, the goddess who had kept him on her island for 7 years. offering him immortality if he would stay. He had refused. He wanted to go home. He wanted to grow old. He wanted to see his wife again. Julie listened to every word. The hall was silent except for Odysseus's voice and the quiet crackle of the torches. She could see the images in her mind, the dark cave, the green sea, the six-headed monster, the beautiful island prison. This was not just a story. This was a man's life. He's not telling them to impress them. He's telling them because he needs to, because if he doesn't say it out loud, it will eat him alive. When Odysseus finished, the hall was quiet for a long time. Then King Alcinous spoke.
You have suffered more than any man should suffer. Tomorrow my fastest ship will take you home to Ithaca.
Odysseus closed his eyes. For the first time since Julie had seen him, his face relaxed. Not happiness, not yet, but something close. Relief. The possibility that the nightmare might finally end. That night, Julie walked alone through the palace gardens. The stars were different here, brighter, closer, more numerous than anything she had ever seen. There was no light pollution, no buildings, no machines, just the sky. She thought about Odysseus, about what 20 years of trying to get home does to a person, about the difference between a man who fights because he wants glory and a man who fights because he wants to sit at his own table again. He doesn't want to be a hero. He just wants to go home. And maybe that's the most human thing I've ever heard. The night air was cool and smelled of jasmine. Somewhere in the palace, Julie could hear the sound of the sea. Always the sea. Always waiting. Always between Odysseus and everything he loved. She didn't see the departure. When the morning came, the palace was already busy with preparations. Sailors loading supplies, servants carrying food and wine to the ship, Nausicaa standing quietly near the harbor with something unspoken in her eyes. Julie stood at the top of the cliff and watched the ship leave. It was small against the enormous blue of the sea, its white sail catching the wind like a hand reaching forward. Odysseus stood at the front, looking ahead, not behind. He did not wave. He did not look back. He just stood, watching the horizon, as if he could already see the rocky shore of Ithaca waiting for him. Julie felt the wind change. The light around her began to shift, golden, then white, then impossibly bright. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she was back. The library was quiet. The rain had stopped. The book lay open on the table in front of her, and the pages were blank again. Julie closed it slowly and pressed her hand against the old leather cover. Nostos. She knew the word now. It was Greek. It meant the return home, but not just the physical journey. It meant the deep, painful longing to go back to the place where you belong, the feeling that pulls you forward even when everything pushes you back. She placed the book gently on the shelf and stood up. 20 years away from home, and he never stopped trying. She turned off the lamp and walked toward the door. The night was quiet outside. Somewhere far away, beyond the rain and the streets and the buildings, the sea was still moving. It always was.